On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
Stick it out. In the end, you'll get somewhere. It's that daily grind. You're just for the first 3 years, you're going to grind and you're going to think nothing's improving, nothing's shifting. And then it feels like suddenly everything just kicks into place.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz, Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz, Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. Today I'm back. I've got Barry Kukkuk here on the Kings stage. My brother, Barry, how you doing?
Good, thanks. And you, Chaz?
Doing wonderful. It's a Monday. I love Mondays, right? Because we just need to go right back at it super hard again and recharge the hill. I usually I do a little discharging over the weekend, and I had a little birthday party for one of my little girls this weekend. So,
fantastic.
yeah, it was a great weekend, and we're back at it. But I'm glad to have you here with us, Barry. You've got such a unique background and story and business. I cannot wait to get into this conversation. Tell us what kind of business that you got, my brother.
So we have a software as a service business, and we exist to help the smaller companies optimize inventory levels in their warehouses. So generally you find people have too much of the things that don't sell, too little of the things that do sell. They don't have a disciplined ordering process and so on. And so we help them with those kind of analytics to get their business a bit more.
Yeah, the software as a service, the old SaaS.
Yeah.
For somebody who isn't familiar, but I love what you guys do because obviously my involvement over the years in retail, whether it be my retail franchises or just other stores that I've worked for even before I was even old enough, really probably where I should have been. Inventory is a big deal, and keeping organized and knowing what you got, and being able to work through it actually is probably a whole nother level that you guys are able to help with. So I love that. And we've got a lot of retail folks that have been guests on the show. I'm sure there's plenty of retail folks that are listening. So maybe some of them will be a great connection for you. But Barry, I want you to answer this question for me as we get started. It's always my first question. And it's why? Why did you build the business? Why are you in business? What's the bigger picture? What's the deeper motivation? I don't know how many different ways I can say it, but what are you doing this for, buddy?
So like I said in the beginning, we really do exist to help these companies. So in a previous life, we had a business where we did much of the same kind of thing, but for much larger enterprise type businesses. And that was kind of the world before software as a service, before the cloud, before all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And we would go and sell a company a $500,000 piece of software and another $500,000 worth of consulting and really help them. And the founders of Netstock we all left that business and did some other stuff. And then we got back together in 2010 and we were like, yeah, let's go do something, but what could we do? And obviously we know this business pretty well.
Wow.
And we realized that there literally are thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of kind of smaller businesses that have the exact same problem as those big guys, right?
Sorry.
They also have inventory problems and they also have purchasing problems. All of that same, they have the day-to-day struggle of fighting fires and so on.
Right.
But if you only have $1 million of inventory in your warehouse, it's basically impossible to buy a $500,000 piece of software, right? Your business is just not at that scale.
Right.
And so what we wanted to do is help these guys. And I think in 2010, when we started, 3 things really came together that made this possible. So first of all, software as a service became a business model that people started working with and accepted it in the marketplace.
Yep.
The cloud became something that people started trusting. Before that, even when we started, it was a bit like, "Ooh, are you sure you want to send our data to the cloud?" And these days, everyone just goes, "Yeah, take it all." The cloud became possible. And the third thing was your web browser became a delivery mechanism that was actually useful.
Right.
And so we started this business to help the smaller guys with a small monthly fee instead of this big upfront fee. And we tried to make the software a lot more user-friendly and easy to adopt than having to have all these consultants come for 6 months and sit in your business to help you.
Yeah.
And I think what happened, especially if you look at the landscape now, probably in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been this seismic shift in especially retail, but also wholesale, where data became the most important thing.
Right.
If you look at a company like Amazon, they're probably a data company first, and a goods and a warehousing and a trucking and all that second. But, Amazon probably employs 10,000 data scientists. And so they have the people who can look through all those masses of data and understand and help them. Where the smaller guys they just don't have access to that. It's just impossible for them to even get onto the same playing field, never mind compete. And so it is our mission to really help and arm these little guys with some software to also compete in the market. Chaz, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world where there's Amazon, Walmart, and that's it. I want a diverse ecosystem where lots of people can thrive, and that's really our mission, and it's been our mission from day one.
I love that, and you're right. I think that helping that bigger pool is a huge leverage point, and I think also too that there's probably a little bit more fulfillment. It sounds like in that, because you could just go work with a whole lot less companies, probably a lot less headache too, and do the bigger deals, but helping those smaller guys, like you said, really does impact like local communities and local
Absolutely.
like jobs and all that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's important. If I look at some of the feedback that we received from our customers, you'll see some of that stuff on our website. If it wasn't for Netstock, I don't think our company would have survived COVID and all the lockdowns. That kind of, that makes you feel like, yes, we're doing this to make a difference. It's not just some job that you do and take a salary check at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And that's that. So it does make it a lot more fulfilling when there's a small company that can say, without your software, we wouldn't have been there. And how many families are affected by that kind of state?
Yeah, exactly. What about for you individually as one of the co-founders and business owner? And I know your fulfillment is attached to the business's fulfillment, but why do you do this every single day?
It's interesting. I would say even as a teenager, I was really into tech, and I wanted to do that, nothing else but tinker around with computers and so on. And for me, I found a way to use that curiosity, my curiosity in that, to turn that into a business to do something and to help me. So it's really about the stuff I really enjoy. I mean, I've learned a huge amount about business in the last 13 years since we started Netstock, but I'm still in the tech side of the business, and that's interesting. And how can we leverage the latest technology to help our customers even better? So that's really my contribution to the business is on the tech side.
Love that. Well, let's talk about the story here. I mean, I'd love to hear how you and entrepreneurialism kind of combined or combusted, if you will. But obviously you said you started with a previous company. Just give us a little bit of the story.
Yeah. So I don't know how far I should go back, but as a young teenager coming out of high school, I was born in South Africa, was raised in South Africa. And at that time, when I was 18, was the time where apartheid fell, right? So I lived through that whole transition from an apartheid government to a democracy.
Yeah.
And at the time, everyone suddenly realized, whoa, hang on a sec, we need to fix the injustices of the past.
Sure.
And one of the ways was, in those days, affirmative action, which later became Black economic empowerment and so on. And at that exact time when that started happening and people said, okay, we need to educate the previously disadvantaged people, we need to give them jobs, we need to elevate them into management and so on, was when I was about to go into university. And my parents didn't have a lot of money, and they couldn't afford to send me to university. So, and suddenly all of the bursaries and so on dried up because of the political change in the country.
Sure.
And so what I did is I started a part-time job, and I started studying part-time and paying for my studies that way. I could still live with my parents, But I had to get a job to do that. So with that kind of background, I realized very quickly that there's not going to be some job handed to me on a platter
Right.
when I graduate. And my thoughts always started going into, all right, if that's not going to happen, I have to do this for myself, right?
Right.
And build something or so on. So that's kind of where that entrepreneurial spark in me started. And I think I tried maybe a little bit too early to start businesses, because I think you have to work in a business for a while to understand some part of business before you can start your own, right?
Yeah.
If you read the email, that's a very a very good summary of, oh yeah, I'm good at this, so let's build a business. And building a business has got almost nothing to do with what you're good
Right.
at.
Right.
And so I probably started a bit early, but I was always involved with more entrepreneurial people and so on. And then working at this company where we did this software for the big businesses was also a small company. In fact, looking back now, they're much smaller than what Netstock is now. And I fitted in better in those smaller entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
do what it takes, voice counts kind of business.
Right.
And yeah, and so that business got bought by a massive kind of enterprise business, and all of us didn't last very long. I think I lasted like 18 months or 2 years, and I was like, no, I can't do it. All
Yep,
this
I'm out.
bureaucracy, all that, I can't do that stuff.
Yeah.
And again, I went out on my own. I did, if you look at Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, the quadrangle, right? So I went into self-employment, which is probably the worst part of that four
Yeah.
quadrants you can be in. And I did freelance work, and everyone's like, oh, it's amazing. You're your own boss. I'm like, no, I've got 10 bosses because I'm working on 10 projects at the
10
same
clients.
time.
That's right.
And unlike a normal boss, these guys can just not pay you. Okay. But I learned a lot of the technologies that we use to start Netstock at that point. So I think I've always been entrepreneurial. It's interesting. I don't think any of my family are entrepreneurial. My dad started at a company, a state-owned company, and retired there 43 years later. One
Wow.
employer. To me, that blows my mind. How do you stay in one place for 43 years? So I don't know. I'm a bit of an outlier in my family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs listening probably feel the same way.
Yeah.
They're the outlier. But what I heard most in your story, honestly, Barry, is that all these pieces kind of lined up to where like maybe individually they were, somewhat connected, maybe still in the same vein of tech, but like you were here, and then all culminated to like, man, I can use all these things together
Yeah.
now to not only serve a certain type of business owner, but one that I enjoy in a space that I really like. And guess what? I got to study some great things that are applicable for what we get to do now. And so I get to build something that uses all the pieces of my story. And a lot of entrepreneurs have this same thing in their journey. So I guess my question to you, maybe somebody's listening right now and they feel like they're in the midst. Obviously, we're always in a journey, but maybe they haven't reached that point where they're like, okay, I can pull from like 3 or 4 pieces of my history now, put them all together and make this offer or do this business, whatever it is. What would you say to that person? So it's like you going back however many years where you didn't quite have all the pieces yet, but you were still putting it together. What would you say to you, or maybe that person listening right now who's not quite there yet?
It's interesting. I can't remember who, but I read in a book somewhere that if you can either specialize and be like the top 1% of your field, the best of the best of the best, like an Olympic athlete, which there's only 100 of them in the world and there's 8 billion people. Or you can generalize and be in the top 30% of 2 or 3 different kinds of non-related fields. But if you can combine those 3 things together, you automatically become that 1%. And I think that's kind of what happened for me. It's like always been interested in the tech, landed in the business that did inventory optimization and management, and became quite interested that there's a lot more there than what meets the eye to start off with. And then also spending time with entrepreneurs and building businesses and so on. And I think that point of you can combine 3 different things and make something new that's probably pretty good is a realization where I think often in school or university, the focus is to specialize in one thing. Get your PhD in a very small subsection of something big. And there's nothing wrong with getting a PhD, but that's the kind of focus that they do is focus into a very thin sliver of a niche where that's not the only way to succeed. And if you can keep your eyes open and think of how can I apply this in this field, a different field, I think there's some opportunities there to do something in life.
I love that perspective. I think that even in my own journey, I can look back and whether it's retail or real estate or sales or operations, inventory, like all these different areas where I'm like, okay, well, these are all very different. But when you put them all together, you're like, oh, wow, I can have a conversation with any entrepreneur in any industry just like this and have an amazing conversation because I've not done it all per se, but I've done a bunch. So it's like, wow, I can have an intelligent conversation across the board. Interestingly enough, guys like Barry say the same thing. Pull out the 3 things that I've done in my past and be able to kind of push them forward to the next version of myself. So I guess the encouragement for the listener is whether they've realized it or not, that they're building those 2 or 3 or 4 blocks. And then eventually at some point you can look back and go, okay, well, let me take those couple of blocks, put them together, see what that builds.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not even that conscious. I'm in awe of the unconscious mind, right?
Oh,
yeah. If I go to bed with a problem, I'll wake up with a solution. It's like your mind doesn't stop at night. It just keeps chugging along until it finds a solution. And for me, it was very much an unconscious mind suddenly coming up with, oh, but if I put this and this together, we can make something else that doesn't exist or doesn't exist in this form. Right. And this might be useful. Look, it could have failed. There's no guarantees, but at least you can always attempt to put those things together and do that. So it wasn't like a conscious, I've got these 3 experiences. Let me put them together. And it's kind of, the unconscious mind, I think it's a very fascinating thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just spent a little bit of time this past weekend with a contact that I made. Actually, he was a guest on my show probably a few 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. Yeah. But we spent some time together here this past week, and he's a mindset guy. We talked Think and Grow Rich. We talked subconscious mind. We talked autopilot, auto suggestion, all this stuff, which has been a big part of both his and my success. And so I think that you're 100% right. We start looking for solutions, whether we realize it or not. And so I guess it lines up with exactly what I was just saying to the listener is that whether you realize it or not, you're putting your story together. So that's the encouragement there. Yeah. Barry, I want you to put yourself in a position here. I'm going to ask you some questions practically about decisions, but I want to know if you were to look back of a good decision that you made, something that hinged, and after you made that decision, you can look back and it was like an upward trajectory of success. It doesn't mean that everything was perfect after that, but what was that one decision practically inside the business that made a big difference?
For Netstock, I think the thing that was a vector to success is getting together founders who are were skilled in different disciplines, right? Yeah. So there was me in the tech side of things. There was Tony on the sales side of things, and there was Andy on the operations. And I see too many people, especially in tech, who can build the best thing, probably a world-changing piece of technology, but no one knows about it. No one can sell it, and it goes nowhere.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you get someone else who builds something that's maybe not that good, but it's well marketed and well sold, and that business takes off. And it's so unfair. But you have to understand that the tech by itself is not enough. And the same thing the other way. So it's no good having the best salesperson in the world, but they've got nothing to sell, right? And it's no good you have a good product and you can sell it, but you can't operationalize it. So for me, I think that was the way that the founders came together was probably one of the best decisions.
Yeah, that's incredible
at the time.
Yeah, and so what's the takeaway for a guy or gal listening right now? Maybe they're a small business, maybe they're a big business, maybe they're already a couple of years in, maybe they've had a large amount of success, maybe they haven't. They're still in the building process, but they're hearing what you're saying as far as like the different skill sets.
Yeah.
Do they go out and try to find other founders now? Do they try to incorporate other people on their team now? Are they taking personality assessments? Are they looking at experience? Like, how does everything you just say go into them putting it into work?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's you probably can start the business without all the people, but very soon you're gonna either have to give us away some equity and get a co-founder, or you're gonna have to employ someone to fill that gap pretty quickly. And it's seeing how quickly that becomes important, right? You can probably build software in a closed room for 6 months, but after that, it needs to start getting out, right? Otherwise, you're building probably in a direction that no one wants, and you need to course correct. So it's not long before you need that. But yeah, it's hard to say, oh, do these assessments or personality traits or whatever. This is where I suppose your personal network comes in. If you know someone, or if I know someone who can suggest someone to work with, that's
Yeah.
far more powerful than even 2 hours of interviews with someone.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably also about who you know, or about who they know, which is important.
Yeah, I think you start taking a look at leverage, right? Not only just the leverage of somebody that you know or someone that you might know, but
Yeah.
what is it that their skill sets or their leverage or their network brings to the table?
Yeah.
How can that be beneficial? I think even just inside of our Gathering the Kings mastermind, I can think of 4 or 5 or 6 collaborations. There's a couple of real estate guys across the country that are building a brokerage in a different state together. And there's a couple of guys that I'm doing some deals with here in the Midwest. There's a couple of guys that I'm doing some projects, some real estate projects with. It's like, there's a guy up in Minnesota that needs a huge water feature for a big development that he's doing. And he's hiring the big water feature guy that's in our group from Colorado. So it's like,
Yeah.
to your point, whether it's an actual partnership with equity or you're just collaborating with the right people, you start looking at who is the right fit. And I think that you hit it right on the head is you start looking into your network. And of course you can interview, and I would highly suggest that, building a team. But when you start looking into your network, you can really quickly, if you've been building a network and you've been serving and adding value to people around you, there's typically some hands that go up that maybe want to do a deal with you.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It also comes back to that thing we talked about earlier, where you have different mindsets coming together to build something.
Right.
Same with your network. You don't necessarily have to go, I don't have to go, Chaz, do you know someone who can be a CFO for me? I can just tell you about my business, and then something in your mind clicks and goes, I'm sure you need this CFO, and I just have the right person. So it's very much, it's not as direct as, please help me out. It's like talking about, stuff with other people also makes their mind mature a little bit, that unconscious part.
Yeah, 100%. I love what you just said, because whether you realize it or not, you're like marketing Gathering the Kings for me, which is great. I love it. Because this is exactly why I started it, in all seriousness.
Yeah.
The actual mastermind, or the subconscious of getting together with 2 or 3 or 20 or 30 other people and being able to throw up a situation, right? Because again, Barry, you guys like you and I, guys at 7 and 8 figures, it's not like I really need you to tell me what to do. Although sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes there's things that you practically know that I don't, and that's super helpful to be able to pass back and forth.
Sure.
However, the more important or the more powerful leverage is if I can get in a room with a guy that's from tech, and a guy from construction, and a guy from real estate, and a guy from whatever industry, and I throw up a situation and I get these little counterparts, and I go, that's really interesting. And then I can go back and start architecting culture inside of my own business based on all these experiences. It's like, wow, that's not in a book somewhere. You can't find that type of value in a book. Am I right?
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's a whole nother level of, like you said, it's almost like a hive mind that you can tap into. And if you can just be part of that, like the Borg in Star Trek, everyone's connected.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Well, and the beneficiary of each of those moves is the collective. It's not just the one guy who is throwing up the situation. It's the whole room that gets to hear the whole room. So love that perspective. What about, Barry, a bad decision? Something that you did, face on the palm, can't believe I did that, I would never do it again. We can learn from it. What is that?
I think I'm going to go back to that founder story. I think we took too long to bring a marketer on board. So we were good at sales, and we had some network and that kind of thing. And But marketing I think was a blind spot for us, right? And if you think about it, yes, if you can't sell the product, you're not going to get any revenue. But if no one knows about it, or you can't generate some interest in it,
Yeah.
then you can have the best sales team sitting there doing nothing because who they're going to sell to, right? So
That's right.
I think we could have gotten a marketing department, even just one or two people up years before we actually did. And I think that would have been really beneficial to us.
Yeah.
To have done it that way.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you, not only just from my experience in business, but also just being able to see other businesses
Mhm.
on this show, as well as just the hundreds of others that I've encountered, that a lot of times you just needed more attention. I mean, I
Right.
could even say the same thing about myself. It's like, here we are building a podcast. It kind of just started just to help people. And
Yeah.
now it's like, well, wait a second here. More people knew about the show, then more people know about just all the things that I'm connected to. It's marketing. And so
It
I think that,
absolutely is.
tell me if you agree with this, Barry, because I think, at least for me, here's a lot of my holdup when it comes to marketing, is that marketing feels like, I don't know, it's the slimier version of sales. Like you think sales, you think used car salesman, and I've been in long enough in sales where as long as you do it ethically and you have a process, you can actually serve and you can help people. That's all good.
Yeah.
But over here, there's like this whole new wave of quote unquote salespeople now in the marketing area, especially online. And you're
Mhm.
like, look, this is just oil, right? Like it sounds really good. And then when you get in there, the system, the program doesn't actually help me do my inventory, or it doesn't help in all the areas. And so it's like, gosh, dang it, I need another tool to couple with this tool. Or you get into a mastermind group and it's like, you know what? This is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's just really good marketers out there.
Yeah.
But it's like the reverse. So guys like me, it's like, we hesitate on the marketing. Maybe you would agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's, especially if you're a technically minded person, coming back to the E-myth idea, is engineers don't like salespeople and they don't like marketing people, right? Because what's their exposure? The exposure is someone phones them out of the blue and go, "Hey, I've got this new insurance for you," right? They go, "Oh, please just block, leave me alone. I hate these people." Or they browsing the web and there's all these ads and it's irrelevant stuff. And it's so for them, for technically minded people, marketing and sales are just, it's all BS. Right? We don't need that.
Right.
So I think that is the kind of mindset that keeps you from venturing into that. And because I didn't know what marketing was all about, especially on the internet, right? I knew there was a thing called Google Ads and there was banners and that kind of stuff, but I didn't really understand how it all worked until we got someone into the business and she started explaining it, and she was like, "This is how we do this, and this is why we do this." And you're not lying. You're tailoring the message so that it lands at your audience.
Yeah.
If you say the same thing in their language, they will resonate, right? So it's like those kinds of things, which I was pretty oblivious. Give me a piece of code and I can reason about it. But give me a person and it's a whole different story. And never mind, give me a million people that trying to show the same message to.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's where that hesitation comes from. Is people are often on the wrong end of or bad marketing, bad sales. And they go, "I never want to do that. My business is going to be ethical."
Yep.
Yeah. And dead.
And dead.
So it's a education I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to go through.
Yeah. I want to make sure the listener just heard you. You said it and we were both laughing about it, but I want to make sure is that even though the person listening right now may not be the person to sell or the person to market, you said you had to go find somebody. Not only just that, even inside of that, as you learned what they knew, you now knew the value of being able to market, not only just because it was reaching more people. Okay, fine. We get that logically, but it is a language. Marketing is a language. Sales is a language.
Yeah.
And if you don't press into those things, you said the business is going to die, or it's just going to always stay so small to where you're just kind of just over and over and over doing the same things, kind of always hitting the same ceiling, because you kind of have to break through with a pipeline. It's like if you're just not filling the pipeline with more and more and more eyeballs, which then turn into more and more sales, You have no real processes that you need. You have no real hiring that you need. You don't need to fill out anything on the back end because you don't really have much of a business. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the issue, right? You can be the hamster on the wheel. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs who really live from month to month, right? Every month it's a worry. Are we going to be able to make payroll this month?
Right.
Right. And I think when you're in that mindset, it's also very difficult to say, you need to spend $100,000 on marketing. I
Right.
go, what's my return going to be? I don't
I
know,
don't know.
but it's probably going to be good, but we don't know. Right.
Right.
So it's very tough to get your mind around that kind of thing. Or when the first time I employed someone who earned a lot more money than me, right? That's quite a mind shift. But those people are so worth it, and that's what you need to like change if you want to get through that ceiling. You have to start thinking in a different way.
Yeah, I love that. Barry's giving you guys some major nuggets here right now. So I hope that you guys are paying attention. I want to go over to the speed round here. My first question in the speed round is always KPI related. I
Yeah.
say it like this, Barry. I want to know if you could only pick one thing to track forever and ever and ever, what would that one thing be?
Oh, it's an unfair question, but I would say
You're right. It is.
gross dollar retention.
Ooh, okay. Give us some deets on that.
So in a SaaS business, obviously you live on your recurring revenue, right? That's what it's all about. But if you have what we call a leaky bucket, in other words, your customers churn and
Yep.
you lose that recurring revenue, you either have to make a lot more sales to keep the level at least the same, or it's slowly gonna drain out. So gross dollar retention really is about the value of my recurring revenue 1 year ago. How much of that did I retain? So if my recurring revenue was $1,000 a month 1 year ago, and I now have $900 a month of that revenue left, then my gross dollar retention is 90%. And if you can get that as close to 100 as possible, your business will be in a good shape. Of course, there's net dollar retention that goes with that, but you ask for one KPI. So
No, that's good. Yeah. You can, I guess, filter down in your decision-making metrics what those other ones would be. What would you say to the company listening right now who maybe doesn't have monthly reoccurring, but maybe services people what they think is one time, but it's like maybe once every 2, 3, 4 years. Maybe they're selling a house. Maybe they're building a deck. How does that person incorporate your thought process?
I suppose if you can sell to the same people again and again, right? So if you can have a business that you sell a house to someone, but guess what? Anyone who's a homeowner knows I'm going to need someone to fix that toilet probably in the next 3 months, right? So maybe you can be the broker to the plumber or the electrician and the general constructor and so on. How can you be the trusted advisor for that client?
Right.
So that when they need other services, they'll come back to you. And if you do that well, when they want to sell their house, guess who they're going to go to? Right? They're not going to go to someone else. They're going to go, I trust Chaz. I want to go back. So that's going to be important. It's a relationship, I think.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Because eventually they do sell their house, or their mom buys a house, or their whoever.
Absolutely.
And that relationship is what will make the difference. And so whether the relationship pays you seemingly once, or if it pays you every month, either way, whether it's a recurring business model, or whether it's a one-time, quote unquote, we know it's not one time, but the one-time sale, both ways you're creating an experience to keep the level of value high. Do you do any specific, like one or two things, or maybe it's mindset on the back end to keep that percentage as close to 100% as you possibly can?
Yeah. So for us, it's all about our customer success. So we've got teams across the world whose only job is to make our customers successful, right? So we learned early on that if you can onboard a customer properly, they will be sticky for a long time. But if you just throw them a piece of software and go figure it out, they're going to churn. So number one is the onboarding experience. It's the most important thing. Once the customer's onboarded, they get to that first value. So we track that time to first value. When they get to that first value, that's important. And that's when we add more value than we ask them to pay us on a monthly basis.
That's right.
After that, it's the general support. And then kind of coming later on is professional services. So what happens in our business is people start using the software, they start getting some benefits, and then they ask the bigger question. So, okay, I've got the general stuff under control,
Right.
but should I open another warehouse, or is it advisable to add another product line to my business or something like that?
Sure.
And that's where they will come back to us, because we've seen this with thousands of customers, and we have far more experience than one person can have. And so professional services come back. And if you can give them good professional services, if you can onboard them properly, give them support, and then obviously your product needs to be updated and stay relevant and so on, then your customers stay. We have to earn our customers' business every month, or some of them once a year, but most of them every month. So yeah, we work hard at that.
Yeah, I think that the obsession around the client journey or the customer experience is what has made a lot of companies great. And so I appreciate your highlight to that. What book or resource would you recommend, Barry, for a business trying to grow?
Good to great. Do whatever to becoming a bit more systemized. That's how you're going to grow. You're not going to grow by treating everything as a new challenge. You're going to grow by finding the challenges that are common and making a system out of that to automatically, those things must happen. Like the marketing must produce leads every day. The sales guys must have this process and so on. So that's, some good insights there. And in the beginning, it was the E-Myth and rich dad, poor dad when I was a teenager and all of that kind of stuff. But to grow, there's another mindset that you need to start getting into.
Yeah, I love that. Love the difference in thinking as well, because you're 100% right. What do you think about intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs?
It's something I've done quite a bit in the past, especially in South Africa. And I think that like we spoke about earlier, it's not about, to me, it feels a little bit like intentional. It feels a bit like, what can you do for me? And I'm only going to speak to the people who look like they will be beneficial, right?
Right. In networking specifically, I assume you.
Yeah. But I mean, it's more about just gathering around people on the same kind of level as you, because that's also the other thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you're doing, your business is starting to do well, it becomes quite lonely, right? You can't talk about certain things with your staff because they're just not at that level. And there's fewer people in your circle, your family circle, friend circle, who have those same kinds of problems. So speaking to other entrepreneurs or other business owners or CEOs or whatever, you can talk about stuff that they can relate to, which is really useful. But it's almost the unintentional consequences of talking to people. Like I said, if someone hears something, and then when they have a problem, or they know they get, someone else in their network, they all talk to you, or you talk to them, or that kind of thing. So I think I think it's hugely beneficial. Hugely.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Got a question for you around family. And there's this story that we tell ourselves as entrepreneurs that we got to be all in. And I think we all are, right? Like, that's why we're successful. But how do you go all in on business and family at the same time?
It's probably one of the toughest things you'll do in your life. It's I'm not going to lie, it's not easy. So what I'm absolutely incredibly privileged is to have a wife that really supports me. Right. Yeah. There's no ways I could have done this without her support. There's just no way. And luckily she's also quite entrepreneurial, and she doesn't do a 9-to-5 job and so on. So when I jump at 8 p.m. and I run to my computer because something and I start doing,
gotta hurry up quick, write it down.
Yes. She's not all about, no, come back to the family. You must play more Scrabble. It's like she gets it. So it's, and we very open communications, and we talk about stuff, and it's great because I can talk to her about, today was so hard and this and that happened, and she will listen, or she will give advice or feedback or whatever. And that's really important to have that. And in the beginning of the business, whenever we went somewhere on holiday as a family, my laptop went with me, and I would check emails every morning, and I would reply and do whatever I needed to, and then spend time with the family.
Right.
And that's just the way it is. And I remember one day I was sitting in a coffee shop in Cape, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, if you don't know. And so it's the coffee shop, a small road, and then the beach and the sea. And I was like looking out over the beach, and I was like typing on my computer, and someone walked in and he said to me, I didn't know this person, right? Very derogatory. You shouldn't be working. You should be enjoying the view and the thing. And first I was a bit taken aback. It's like, who are you? And who are you to tell me what to do?
Yeah.
Then I said to him, don't you think it's an amazing privilege I have that I am able to do my job without having to sit in a cubicle somewhere? I can do that right here on the beach, right? So you can look at the same situation in two ways.
That's right.
And that's important for that balance. You can either say, oh, you have to take your laptop to vacation, or you can say, isn't it amazing? We can actually be on vacation, even if you have to do a few emails in the morning, you're not stuck in an office. So that's a kind of a mindset change that you need to do. And so my daughter's a swimmer, and especially in primary school, in beginning of high school, in swimming season, every week is a swim meet, right?
That's right.
And I don't know if you've ever been to a swim meet, but it's like sit there for 6 hours to watch your kids swim for 3 minutes, right?
Yep.
But
It's like a track meet.
yeah, it's the same thing, right? So it's important. It was important for me to do that. So it's like the one thing that I could do and show her that I'm there for her. And so on. She's now a teenager and she doesn't want to be anywhere near school, and that's fine. But I think you can, I don't think this balance is very easy to achieve or should be achieved.
Right.
But there's a way that you can still incorporate both parts of your life into one. And it really helps to have a supportive family, especially a partner.
Yeah. I love that. I couldn't agree with you more. I got one last question here for you, Barry. If you could whisper in the younger Barry's ear, what would you say?
Stick it out. In the end, you'll get somewhere. It's that daily grind. You just for the first 3 years, you're gonna grind, and you're gonna think nothing's improving, nothing's shifting, and then it feels like suddenly everything just kicks into place. Don't give.
Such a good word. Barry, how can the listener find you? Number one, if they are first off, tell us maybe the lane of business that you service best. That way they can find you and get you your software as a service. And then also tell us where we can find you if we want to just pick your brain and have a business conversation.
Absolutely. So we really help distributors, importers, that kind of thing, retailers, and light manufacturing or kitting, that kind of thing. So if you buy a few things, put it together as a kit and then sell it, those are the kinds of businesses. Obviously, if you have some inventory, if you only have 10 items, we're probably not going to help you that much. You can do it on Excel, but if you have a few thousand SKUs and things become a bit more difficult and you need to do some forecasting and understanding, we can really help you with that. So yeah, retailers, distributors, and light manufacturers. The best place to get me is on LinkedIn, and don't email me. It's email. That's just
it's a waste.
It's a disaster zone. My email inbox. I don't know how people do inbox zero. I'll never be able to get there. So, or you can tweet me or go to our website and to get in contact there.
Love it. Well, Barry, we'll put all that in the show notes for the listener to be able to connect with you, but also if you are one of the listed businesses, for sure, reach out to Barry. I've been in businesses of my own, as well as worked for other companies that don't have inventory management solutions. And you want to talk about probably an instant value. So definitely link up with Barry if that makes sense. You've been incredible today, like just honest and just gave us some really great feedback. I love the answers about family. You are someone worth knowing, and just spending a little bit of time with you here today. It was incredible. So Barry, blessings to you, your family, your teams, everything that you put your hand to here in 23. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chaz. I really appreciate that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing literally over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings literally exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.